Hey everybody, and welcome back to Indie Corner, the show where we take in-depth look at indie games. So 2 years ago, I was in the Kickstarter phase. I think a lot of us were, where I was supporting a lot of indie projects on Kickstarter. One of those projects was Nefarious, a 2D platformer in which you play as the villain instead of the hero. The premise of the game is you're supposed to have the advantage, yet it's still supposed to be fun. So the game finally came out last week, and how does it stack up to my expectations? Let's just say I might be done with Kickstarters. Here's Nefarious. Nefarious plays very similarly to any other 2D platformer in where you run and have a jump and attack button. Nefarious can either punch in any direction he likes as his melee attack or shoot a grenade out of his hand. More advanced players will find themselves also using the grenade blast to propel themselves to new areas. No real complaints on these basic mechanics, as the platforming does feel quite smooth throughout the game. I did find the melee attack to be nearly useless next to the grenade launcher, however. That said, that could just be my preference in playstyle, and I could see players gravitating to either a melee focused playthrough instead of using ranged attacks. The game's mechanics will change as players progress, since each level is based on kidnapping a princess, and once said princess is kidnapped, they'll affect Nefarious in some way. For example, in one stage you'll gain the ability to create temporary lava platforms, in another your jump will be extra light, etc. In every one of these instances, I welcomed the new princess mechanic, and it made the levels feel fresh and non-repetitive. As you play through the game, you'll also gain more currency, which will allow you to upgrade Nefarious. These upgrades include more health or more grenade slots, as well as modifications to your melee and grenade attack. For example, one grenade upgrade lets you shoot sticky grenades instead of regular bouncing ones. In every case, the attack upgrades don't stack but have to be chosen one over the other, leaving the player to choose their favorite attack upgrade and not bothering with the rest. Aside the health and grenade slot upgrades, I felt the whole upgrading menu was underwhelming. A player can choose to bypass any upgrade and not really miss out on anything. It's a lost opportunity, since being a villain who could gain all these cool tech upgrades would have made the whole experience that much more enjoyable. Lastly, there are the unique boss battles, which is what the game's thing is supposed to be. This is the part I was most curious to discover, to see how you can give the player the feeling of having the upper hand on the hero while still keeping it fun. Unfortunately, it seems the game didn't figure it out. The control scheme is different for every boss battle, and they're poorly executed and bland for the most part. In one battle, you're struggling with the controls of a ship that has a wrecking ball dangling from it to try and get enough momentum to hit the hero. The result is the complete opposite of fun. To make matters worse, the developer decided to then make a whole level dedicated to Nefarious piloting the ship with a wrecking ball attached. That boss battle is clearly inspired by the first boss battle in Sonic 1, and you'll recognize many other battles inspired from older games as well. Aside the nostalgia though, there isn't much worth experiencing here. I felt Nefarious had so much potential in being a truly unique 2D platformer, but it fails to deliver on its most core concept, which is the fun of playing a villain. While the platforming is decent, the boss battles fail to impress or deliver, and with a lackluster upgrade system, I have to give Nefarious' gameplay a 6.5. Next is the graphics department, which is reminiscent to a WayForward game. The game does live up mostly to the expectation it sets in its trailer, with a few exceptions. My biggest gripe is that some of the level art assets felt cheap and could have used a bit more detail or shading to really make them pop. In a few instances, I also found myself confused with what objects were in the foreground and background. Otherwise, the characters and enemies were all very well detailed and looked good, and so I'll give the game's graphics a 7. Next we have sound, which is by far Nefarious' strongest point. Props to Matthew Taranto for his audio work in the game. I specifically sat through the credits to get his name because it's that good. I'll let my favorite track speak for itself. Just listen to this. And for that, I give Nefarious' audio a 9.5. Not a perfect 10, as the game's sound effects could have been more satisfying. Just listen to this scene where the major sound effect is the grenade explosion. Why does the guy in the floating vehicle not have weapons that make sound? Listen to the sound Nefarious makes when he gets hit. It's all just underwhelming or lackluster. Now let's look at the challenge. I could argue that Nefarious' challenge is pretty tame since I went through the whole campaign in 3 hours, but that wasn't with its fair share of deaths. On a 2D platformer difficulty scale, Nefarious hangs near the middle, being easy enough for non-veterans of the genre. There's also enough challenge there for a more experienced player, especially if you're looking to collect all the extras for 100% completion. Personally, I wasn't drawn to want to collect any of the extras because I had little incentive to do it, and the challenge to do so offered more frustration than reward. Nefarious has challenge, but I see little incentive to want to put myself through such unnecessary pain. And so I give the game a 6.5 for challenge. Lastly, we have the fun factor. After considering all the parts of the game, does it come together to make a fun experience? Sadly, the answer is not really. It's not a broken or flawed game, but it doesn't stand out either. I could easily think of a few dozen other platformers I'd rather play than Nefarious. I felt the game could have done so much by taking such a unique take on the genre, but for whatever reason the whole experience just comes out as mediocre. It's completely bland and every element that could have spiced it up fails to deliver. For that, I have to give the game a 6.5 in terms of fun factor.
So in the end, my time with Nefarious was very short. Like I said, it's 3 hours and I doubt I will be going back into the game anytime soon or ever at that, because the game just has so much potential and it's just lost. It's just so bland. And it's very disappointing because this is one of the Kickstarter projects in which I funded the most. I was a $40 backer in this because I really believed in it. The trailer sold me on the game. But that's the thing with these Kickstarter projects. A lot of them are either new development teams or teams that are just too small to put together a game in the time frame and the budget to really meet that expectation that we all have from larger studios. So for me, I think I'm done with Kickstarters. Not I think, I am done with Kickstarters. I haven't put money into one in over 2 years, and after all of the Kickstarters I've backed have come out and have been a bit lackluster, I'm pretty much done with them. Overall, Nefarious is a decent 2D platformer, and if you're a really hardcore fan of trying every 2D platformer, I recommend it. But it's just so mediocre, I have no real reason to tell you, you need to play this, you need to try this. It's nothing special. And for that, I have to give the game a 6.5. Thanks again for joining me here on Indie Corner. I don't know what game I'll be reviewing next. I have quite a few lined up, quite a few I want to try. But do subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you on the next episode. Until then, keep on playing indie.